Morning, welcome to another Sunday morning rant with me. As you can see, I'm not in the studio, but that's for a very good reason. So it's a sort of quiet Sunday morning here in the UK. It's actually a bank holiday weekend, so that means we get Monday off as well. So it also happens to be return of Formula 1, so I should be sitting down at 1 o'clock to watch and see if Lewis can get from the back of the grid to the front of the grid with all the penalties he incurred this weekend. In the Spa Frankenschurz, probably said that wrong, Belgian Grand Prix. Anyway, moving on. So last week, I think, I was talking about rumours that there was a new arrrrr product coming on stream. There is definitely going to be something in the arrrrr range coming on stream on what Roland have now termed 909 Day, which is the 9th of September. Whether it's the System 8 that I spoke about last weekend, don't know. What I do know is that the photograph I saw on several websites appears to be a fake. So I don't think, if it is a System 8, I don't think it's going to look like that. That was somebody's reimagination. However, it did look rather good. We know that there's going to be 30 products of some description that are going to be launched on that day. We also know that there's a DJ product in there because I think it's Sonata, which is the software company that makes the software, has already announced they are launching something, but we don't know what it is. And obviously over the last week there's been lots of sort of things coming from the Roland camp on social media, sort of YouTube video clips, etc. So there's a number of things coming downstream. We might have to just wait and see unless some more stuff is leaked in the following week. So that's 909 Day. The other thing is, I think I said in probably several months ago that I have for years been using this as my secondary MIDI interface. Now I use this predominantly, or have used this predominantly, for dropping sysx files from one of the legacy techs to the computer and vice versa. And the reason why I use this is because on the legacy stuff it tends to work better when there is a one-to-one relationship between the computer and the synthesizer or the sound module. I tend to find trying to go through something like I've got a Mark of the Unicorn XT as my MIDI patch bank in the studio, and I tend to find trying to do sysx dumps through that, it doesn't like it. It really doesn't work too well. And that could be the routing software on the Mac, it could be the routing software when I'm using it on the PC, I don't know. But I found that every single time using that, it worked. So, the problem with this, of course, is this has to be 15 plus years old now. So I've had this quite a while. And I found when I bought my Mac with the latest Mac operating system, whatever it is, Lion, Tulip, Daisy, I don't know what it is at the moment, but when the latest operating system was installed on the Mac, this did not work. Okay, and it hasn't worked for over a year on the Mac, which I think was the last time I tried it. Purely because the Mac doesn't recognise the drivers for this, and there are no drivers on the M-Audio website. This is a non-supported interface now. So I was using it with my Windows 7 machine, which did have drivers for it. However, in the fullness of time, of course, I've upgraded my Windows 7 machine to a Windows 10 machine, and Windows 10 also does not have supported drivers for this. It does some really weird stuff. So unfortunately I have a perfectly functional piece of equipment that I can't use. So it's going to be going on eBay because as far as I'm concerned it's gone to the interface in the Sky now. So hopefully somebody else will get use out of this, because there's nothing wrong with it apart from the fact the latest operating systems don't support the damn thing. And that's actually going to become a problem, more and more of a problem as we go forward with tech, because you've got USB interfaces coming into equipment, and you've got to make sure that equipment's fully supported. So the manufacturers need to be on top of this and make sure that we are supporting all of their tech, even if it's gone out of production. All of their tech needs to be supported on the latest OS, because we're forced by Microsoft and Apple to keep moving our operating systems forward. But on the flip side of that, you, the manufacturers, have a duty to us, because we've bought your products, to make sure that those drivers are available all the time for those legacy products that we've bought. We've spent our cash with you. So my message is, I look in my studio and I've got a whole host of synthesizers, sound modules that are, take the M1 for argument's sake, that is 30 years old. It is still perfectly usable, and I have so much pleasure playing the M1, the D50, the DX7. Okay, as I say, they're 30 years old. Some of this newer tech with USB interfaces, that can be used for years and years and years and years by people like me who've gone out and spent their hard cash. So it's a plea really to the manufacturers to say, look, just keep these drivers refreshed for the latest operating systems, because we have no choice. We have to buy the latest operating system for the computers. Anyway, that's gone, and it's been replaced by this. Okay, so this is the latest version. It has 2 in, 2 out, whereas that's a 2 in, 4 out. But it's going to be used in the same role, and this will work with my Mac and with my Windows 10 machine. So that's the latest one. Good stuff. Just peeves me I have to go and spend money on something to replace something that works, or worked, should I say. So here's another one of those little flip things. So I was going through my cards for my M1 the other day, and I've got a number of duplicates in there, and I don't know where the duplicates have come. So I think I've bought equipment over time. I know I've had a couple of M1s, I've had a couple of rack mount modules, and probably have acquired some cards with those as I bought and sold them. But I came across this card, and it is, if you can see that on the camera there, it's actually an M3R card. Okay, that won't work on an M1. Okay, it was designed for a later keyboard, and there is something about that will not work on M1. Works perfectly on M3, doesn't work on my M1, or my M1R, I might add. But the reason I've got that out, actually I left it out, was because when I was taking photographs for its eBay listing, because I'm obviously going to knock it on, what I did find is this. So if you look at that, you can see demo song by Jordan Rudess. Right? So I don't know a Jordan Rudess, I do know a Jordan Rudess. Do you reckon Jordan Rudess and Jordan Rudess are one in the same? For those of you who don't know, Jordan Rudess is the keyboard player with a band called Dream Theatre, which is I suppose you call them a prog rock band. They were playing in London earlier in the year. Very, very, very fine keyboard player. Anyway, I think they might have spelled his name wrong. Moving on. So, the reason why I'm here. Why am I not in my studio this morning? Well, the reason is actually very simple. I am going to be performing some maintenance on this beastie. So, if I just move out of the way a bit, so you can see it, and you can see my cup of tea sitting behind me. This is, there you go. This is an Akai S6000. So, why have I bought an S6000? Why have I bought a hardware sampler? That's actually a very good question. So as long as I can remember, on my wish list of keyboards to own, or sound modules to own, I always wanted an S1000. So this shows you how old I am. I can remember an S1000, I can remember watching the people acts like the Pep Shop Boys having S1000 up on stage with them. So over time that sort of went from an S1000 to an S3000, and there it sort of stopped, because I thought, well, I'm never going to buy one, why bother? But it's always been one of those things. I've always wanted an Akai hardware sampler. These things in the day, and still today to be honest, because I know various people who still use these, including the person I got this off of. So in the day they are state-of-the-art hardware sampling. Okay, they have one job, that is to act as a sampler and to act as a trigger for the sound coming out the flip side. So, as I said, I've always wanted one. I've never quite got round to buying one. A couple of weeks ago, somebody I know decided they were going to sell theirs and were looking for a very good home for it. Me! So I've bought it. And there is nothing wrong with it. It works, it's been well used, it's been used in pretty much most of the time in a studio environment, so you know, I know where it's been used. It's not been in a smoky environment or that sort of thing, because that really can gum the electronics up. So it just needs some fairly routine maintenance, bit of a clean being done to it. So yes, I bought one of these. I have to be honest and say I've never used an Akai sampler. As I said, I've got friends who swear by them, in terms of, you know, I know my Kronos will do sampling, for argument's sake, but I've got friends who swear that the Akai is just a cut above in terms of the way you would sample. The other thing about using a hardware sampler over a software sampler, I know lots of people nowadays will obviously they will sample the sound, they will drop them into their Ableton or Logic or something like that. Every time you drop more sounds, for argument's sake, into a program, into a DAW, you're eating up processor and memory. Okay, and at some point you're going to start to run out of it. You know, unless you've spent, you know, you've got serious high-end gear. Now my Mac is very high-end, and I have to be honest and say I don't experience any loss with my Mac, because it's got a SATA solid-state drive on it. It's got lots of memory, fantastic off-board graphics card, but you will start to have problems the more stuff you run on these systems, because they're all competing for processor time. Okay. Whereas if you go and use something like a hardware sampler like this, for argument's sake, you're actually pushing the processing to another device. Therefore, you can fully use that device's memory, CPU, etc., etc., and not have to worry about clogging up the CPU in here. The other thing you can do with this device is you can do a lot of the pre-processing on the sample. So you can sample it, you can pre-process it here, and then you can move it to your DAW. Alright, so there's different ways of thinking about how you might use this in the workflow. So my challenge over the sort of coming months is to work out how the hell I use this, because I have to be honest and say I haven't got a clue how this thing works. I'm quite looking forward to playing around with it and finding out how it works, but at this point in time I really haven't got a Scooby-Doo, apart from the fact it boots up and I've heard it in the studio and I've seen obviously friends of mine using it. This is the 6000. I think this was the top of the range. and the last of the big ones. Initially, when I thought about buying an Akai again, I did think about buying a 3000, but hey ho, what have I ended up with? The other great thing about this unit, which I quite like, is, and this is how my friend ran it, is that the control unit, which is obviously this thing here, which you would normally see on the front of the unit like so, comes off, and then there is a serial cable that plugs in the back here, and my friend gave me, I don't know, probably about 10 metres of cable with it, because this was in a rack quite a way, and then he had it all routed around the back of his studio to this, which sat on the desk. You know, the beauty of this is this can actually sit somewhere not close to here, so this doesn't have to be particularly close to the computer and the door, but it can sit and I can control it. It also has this ASCII keyboard thing, and my friend said I really probably should go and get an ASCII keyboard. It's going to be interesting because most keyboards now are USB, of course, but go and get an ASCII keyboard to plug it in, because he said it's far easier to actually edit stuff on here when you've got a keyboard. So we shall see. I think that's me done for another week. Can't think of anything else at the moment. Been doing some clearing out in the studio, so just because I've been a bit lazy recently and left loads of stuff just sort of sitting on the floor, which I really shouldn't do. Oh yeah, one other thing is, my friend gave me this, and this goes back to my normal rant about power and such like. So this thing has, this thing has, let me see if I can find out. So, this thing has a power consumption of 60 watts. Right? In the UK speak, 60 watts is equivalent to 0.3 of an amp, maybe 0.4 of an amp if you want to push the point, right? So that's 0.3 to 4 of an amp, right? So my friend, who has been operating this for a number of years, has, and I don't know whether you can see this on here, there you go, a 13 amp fuse in here, right? Here's my rant. 13 amps, if this thing develops a fault and you put 13 amps through that, you will fry it. Absolutely crystal fry it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be whipping out that 13 amp fuse, and I've got a couple of 1 amp fuses over there, so I'm going to put a 1 amp in there. If you can't get 1 amp, 3 amp. Okay, none of your musical equipment, and I mean this, I really do mean this, should ever be running on more than probably 3 amps. Okay, because it just doesn't pull enough. Even, you know, the big keyboards I've got in there, okay, they're only pulling at top whack 125 watt, which is just over half an amp. Okay, so it comes back to my rants on power protection, fusing your equipment right. The only things in your studio that may need more than a 3 amp fuse is an amplifier, depending on what sort of wattage you've got, so anything above, so if you think about it in multiples are about 220 watts, so 220 watts being equivalent to roughly about 1 amp, 442 amp, 660. So, you know, if you've got something that is greater than, say, 660 watts in power, and it's RMS, okay, it will need a bigger fuse. But in general terms, you know, make sure it's less than 3 amps. If you can get 1 amp fuses, if you go to Maplin, you can actually get 1 amp fuses. Get a 1 amp fuse, stick it in here, because that will mean if you do have a spike, it will fire the fuse before it fries the equipment. And believe me, if you spend the amount of money that most of us have spent on their musical equipment, seeing it all go up in a power of frames because the electrical company can't get their acting gear and supply you with a steady supply of electricity, you will be really, really upset. And the other thing is, try claiming on your insurance for it, because you'll find that your musical equipment, for an act of a power spike or a brownout or something like that, you find it very, very difficult to claim on your house insurance, or if you've got specialist musical insurance. Okay, so do your best, put rectifiers in, put surge protectors in, and if you're like me, I've actually got a uninterruptible power supply sitting between the mains and my studio equipment. Anyway, that's me done for another week. Catch you later.